more streaming from home options this week, starting with The Old Guard, which is on Netflix, and I thoroughly enjoyed this film. It's based on a comic book, which I didn't realize or I didn't know going into it, but once you start watching it, it makes a lot of sense that it is based on a comic book. And I loved it. It's excellent. It stars Charlize Theron and Kiki Layne, and it's directed by Gina Price-Bythewood. And the comic is written by Greg Rucka, and at the end of the movie, I was just like, are there more comics for me to read? Like, when is the sequel coming? I haven't felt that way about a comic book movie in particular in a long time. It's not the most original thing. It's one of those stories that just kind of takes elements from things that you're kind of already familiar with, and therefore doesn't have to explain them too much. You don't have to do that much hard thinking for this film, which was very refreshing. The action was great, and especially contrasting it with something like Extraction, which was another Netflix original big, blockbuster type film. I feel like Extraction was a failure comparatively. I feel like they were like, okay, well, we're going to make this needlessly violent, and we are going to, have one scene where we blow stuff up. This, I was like, okay, there's a lot of violence in it, but it kind of makes sense. Also, Charlize Theron is just fantastic. Like, Atomic Blonde I loved. This is just great. Like, I love seeing her in these action roles. Mad Max, oh my God, Mad Max, like, of course. The choreography to the action, I think, was actually the most impressive thing to me. And there is a story motivation for it. A lot of the times I get frustrated by films where it's like, super soldiers and things like that. And you're just like, how could that? Nobody's that good. But this has an actual plot-driven point as to why these, the people would be that good. Basically, the story is that Charlize Theron is a warrior, and she has a group of mercenaries, and they are immortals. They are immortals. It's in the taglines, whatever. They're immortals, and they've been protecting the world for centuries. So, of course, they've been, like, fighting together for centuries. They have built up those skills. I think, like, Wolverine is a character where that makes sense as well. But, you watch an Extraction, and you're just like, Chris Hemsworth is a super soldier? Like, okay, that's cute. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, the action was great. This could have totally come out in a theater, and I would have equally enjoyed it. But the fact that it is on Netflix, and if you already have a subscription, you are set. There are also some very sentimental parts to it that I think it did really, really well. They are not necessarily as evenly interwoven as I would have liked, but you can't have everything. But there were parts in it I was like, oh, that was a really touching moment. Not something you always get in an action-based comic book film. So highly recommend it. Like, if you like this type of film, if you like action, if you like comic book type stuff, if you like a little bit of that kind of supernatural thing. And also Kiki Layne is such a superstar too. Like, Charlize Theron, obviously a superstar, but Kiki Layne, if you haven't seen If Beale Street Could Talk, wow, just, so different than this, but such an excellent performance. Highly recommend The Old Guard. I think it's refreshing, fun summer action, especially in a time where we're feeling very cooped up. I'm going to give it 3.9 out of 5. And then on the other hand, my other movie is a film that just has action in it and really not a lot of zero character development, zero explanation for it. I would say if you are probably a middle-aged white man, you're going to love this movie. It's a dad movie, basically, is what it comes down to. It's a white dad movie. It's called Greyhound. It is starring Tom Hanks and written by Tom Hanks. And I feel like written by is being a little bit generous because it takes place during World War II. It takes place on a boat in the crossing of Atlantic. I don't know if it was a shorter section of that, but basically Tom Hanks is a sea captain and he is leading a convoy of ships and they are under attack. And most of the dialogue is just naval soldiers repeating orders at each other. Not very interesting. And the other biggest problem, look, Tom Hanks is, of course, a likable human being, but that doesn't mean his characters should automatically benefit from that. And I feel like, especially with Won't You Be My Neighbor and one where he played Walt Disney, like, yeah, okay, kind of there's that meshing of like, nice guy, people like him, therefore it plays into the character and establishes. This is just like, he's a dude captaining a ship. There is nothing exceptional about him that we can tell. He is certainly put under duress, but as far as I could tell, none of the actions he took were exceptional and showed that like only he could have been the person doing this. And I don't know if every film needs to be that, but I'm just like, why are we following this guy? Could this been a collaborative thing? Could we have been following multiple people on the ship? We're just following it because he's Tom Hanks. And there's no explanation for like, this was an extraordinary, act of whatever. It's just like, he kind of lucked into this. I was very bored by it. It's a lot of action, but also monotonous. And it tries to dial it up to a 10, but then it just stays there. And it's like, well, then that makes 10 0, right? Because it changes your baseline. There was no character development in it. Like, I'm going to spoil a tiny bit of it. He struggles with people's names in the beginning, refers to people by the wrong name, and you'd think like, oh, by the end, maybe, because they've been through this very stressful thing, there'd be some character growth and he would refer to somebody correctly and you'd be like, oh, okay, like they've bonded. Nope. Nope, no progression there. Look, but at the same time, like, my dad liked it, and I was like, you are, of course, the target audience for this. He is the demographic for it. So if that sounds appealing to you, if you're maybe in that demographic, like, totally fine, enjoy your Tom Hanksness, but if you are anything outside of that, I don't think this is the film for you. And again, it's not to say I don't enjoy a good World War II movie. I think it's certainly possible to make an interesting one. This is just not an interesting one. So I'm going to give it 2 out of 5.